This is Jonathan Agger, Fifth for Pro Boxing Fans, joined by Dan Rafael over Zoom after a big weekend of fights, two trilogies. Dan, how's everything going?
Everything is good. I've been a little under the weather the last couple of weeks. I'm feeling much better now, so forgive me if I start coughing like crazy, but I'm doing all right. But yeah, it was a pretty good boxing weekend. We got a good one coming up this week, and then we hit the end of the year, and there'll be a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back in force next year.
As usual, I'd implore people to go check out your Substack. I'll leave a link in the description, but that's all going well for you.
Couldn't be better. Really enjoying myself doing that. It allows me to write about the things I'm most interested in, the way I want to do it, and don't have to answer to anybody except myself. If it comes out great, I get the credit. If it sucks, it's my fault, and it's a beautiful thing. And listen, being honest, it's a labor of love, but I'm very happy and appreciative to the folks that have paid for subscriptions. It's helping support the cause, and it's actually generating some money for me, which I appreciate because we all got to make some money. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been very, very rewarding.
Good to hear. Dan, first of all, let's start with some sad news yesterday, the passing of referee Mills Lane. Obviously, everyone knows him from the Tyson Holyfield fight, but what are your memories of Mills Lane? Did you get to know him over the years?
I met Mills a few times early in my career. He had retired in 1998, but he was still around fights a little bit at the beginning of my career. I did not know him well at all. I've gotten to know over the years his sons who have been involved in boxing. They've been boxing managers, particularly I've known Terry Lane, who I spoke to the other day after his father passed. They've worked in the industry. Great guys. And look, it's a sad situation because Mills hadn't really been the same since he had a very, very bad stroke some 20 years ago. So his family, his wife Kay and the kids, they've been taking care of him. But it's a long time. So in some ways, they were almost relieved that at long last, he was sort of out of his misery, even as sad as the situation it is. But when Mills was actively refereeing, he was as big a name in refereeing as there could be. I mean, I was thinking about this when I was writing about his life and his passing. There probably hasn't been another referee in the entire history of boxing that has transcended boxing, that has become a mainstream celebrity. Part of it's because of things like the Tyson fight, obviously the way he handled that. And there were some other bizarre fights he was the referee in, not to his fault, but he was the guy in the ring during Fan Man, for example, and Bo Holyfield too, when the paraglider, landed on the ring ropes and caused a massive disruption and delay. He was there in the ring for the two crazy Lennox Lewis fights, one when Oliver McCall had the mental breakdown in the middle of the fight. And then just a few months later in Lennox's next fight, when he had regained the title from McCall, made a defense against Henry Akinwande, who Mills had to disqualify because Henry wouldn't stop grabbing and holding and hugging Lennox Lewis. So he was involved in some bizarre fights. He was breaking a clinch between Bernard Hopkins and Robert Allen in their first fight when they were fighting for Bernard's middleweight championship. And when he broke them apart, Robert Allen accidentally fell out of the ring because he was, during the break, and he injured himself, and the fight had to be stopped and called a no contest. So Mills found himself in the middle of some of these wacky fights. But the one thing I always liked about him as a referee was he always was under control. He was always poised. He never got too high, too low. He really always did a superb job, and doesn't get bigger. And then, like I said, he transcended the sport. I mean, he ended up with his own courtroom show, Judge Mills Lane, kind of like the People's Court. We had a court shows here in the United States on television. They made a claymation series called Celebrity Deathmatch on MTV, where he voiced his own claymation character as the referee for these over-the-top sort of wild, stylized fights. And so he had a great career. And he was more than just a referee, too, by the way. He had a career as a court judge, as a district attorney. He had boxed professionally as in the early 60s and had a 10-1 record. He had made it to the United States Olympic trials. He did a lot of things besides the refereeing, but of course he became famous for refereeing, and of course the catchphrase that caught on and everybody loved and got everybody pumped up before the fights. tell the fighters in the center of the ring, touch gloves, he'd pound his fist and say, "Let's get it on." And it was sad, but the memories of his fights, I mean, are legendary.
Absolutely. Obviously over the weekend we had, excuse me, the Fury-Chisora fight, which we discussed beforehand in depth, and I guess it went pretty much as everyone expected. But what were your thoughts on the fight?
Well, it was worse than I had expected, to tell you the truth. I mean, I knew that Fury would do a real number on Chisora in my mind, and he did that and more. I hated everything about the fight, being honest. I mean, look, I have a huge respect for Tyson Fury, for everything he has accomplished. He's the bona fide heavyweight champion of the world. He's a great fighter. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. He's got tremendous skills. He can punch. He does everything you want a heavyweight to do. He's got heart. He's exciting. He draws a crowd. He's got a big personality. Nothing negative about Tyson. And I have nothing negative to say about Derek Chisora either. He's a warrior, always gave a great effort, has a great chin, fought everybody, made some great fights. So it's not so much about either fighter. It was just it was just a match that was so unnecessary. I mean, we all said it beforehand. And, I understand the promoters have their job to do. They got to try to sell the event, and they're not going to dog their own product. We had already seen Tyson dominate Derek 2 times back at a time where Fury was not as good as he has become, and where Chisora is much worse than he was back then, because his career has gone sort of down the hill a little bit. So when you take a guy that's much better from their first 2 fights, and he's now in with a guy that's not nearly as good as he was back when they fought the first 2 times, what the heck do you expect? He took an absolutely unnecessary beating. His corner was terrible. The fact that they let him continue to take that beating without stopping it, and actually had the balls to say to the referee, "Oh, he's fine," blah, blah, blah. Give me a break. I mean, he took so much unnecessary punishment. I get that Tyson Fury wanted to stay busy, have a fight before what he hopes is the undisputed fight against Usyk, in the first part of next year. That's a real 180 for him after proclaiming to everybody he was going to retire and not fight again, blah, blah, blah. Suddenly he had a fight in December. So he gave his friend the payday. I mean, I respect that, but it just should never have gone down the way it did. The punishment he dished out, nobody seemed to care about the future of Derek Chisora. He took so much punishment. It was so unnecessary. I'm glad it's behind us. I hope Fury moves on and gets the undisputed fight. I hope Derek Chisora, got a good payday and decides to call it a day. He doesn't need to take more punishment. That's an event that's better forgotten, in my opinion.
Obviously, we saw Usyk and Joyce approach Fury after the fight. In your opinion, who gives him the tougher fight out of those 2? I mean, Tyson said in the post-fight press conference he feels Joyce gives him a harder fight than Usyk. What's your view?
Well, it really, when they so-called confronted him, it was really Fury is the one that called Usyk up to the ring. Joyce sort of joined the party out of nowhere. But look, the styles of Joyce and Alexander Usyk, I'm not breaking new ground here. You couldn't have 2 more divergent styles of fighters. Usyk is a master boxer, a southpaw, massive skills and quickness. Joe is more of a bruiser, much bigger, much heavier puncher, more lumbering, not nearly as fast. Both of them were obviously top-notch amateurs. I mean, Joe was a silver medal winner in the Olympic Games. A lot of people thought he got ripped off in the final against Yoka and really should have had the gold medal. Usyk, of course, fighting in the Joe was a super heavyweight. Usyk was in the heavyweight, which is a little bit less weight. He got the gold medal. So they both have great amateur backgrounds. But in terms of who might give Tyson Fury the tougher fight, I think they're both tough fights, but I think they're just totally different. He's going to have to prepare a much different way, because he's going to have to chase Usyk around a little bit and deal with the speed and the lateral movement and the unusual angles and the southpaw style and all that. Never easy, even though he's going to be much bigger. In terms of Joyce, Tyson Fury is going to have him right there in front of him. Joyce not going anywhere, not hiding anywhere. You can't miss him. He's a huge guy like Tyson is. Tyson will still be a little bit taller, but there's not going to be any secrets about where he is in the ring. He's going to be right there in front of him. So the question is, can Tyson Fury use his power to break down a guy with a great chin? And will Joyce be able, who's got good power himself, can he connect? I mean, look, we've all seen Tyson Fury on the mat several times Just look at the trilogy against Deontay Wilder. I don't think Joyce is as big of a puncher as Wilder, but he's not a non-puncher. He's a really good puncher in his own right. So, I mean, gun to my head, I think for a lot of reasons, Joyce might actually be the tougher fight because he's just got such durability and good punching power that, pack a lunch because you're going to be in the ring a long time against Joyce, and you're going to know you were in a fight. I don't think that Usyk can really hurt Tyson Fury. He may be able to outbox him and maybe even make him look foolish here and there with the way he moves and all that. But just from the physical standpoint, Joyce is a much tougher fight in my mind.
And trilogy fight, I'm sure you did enjoy very much. They never seem to disappoint, Estrada and Chocolatito. Do you see what was your thoughts on the fight, and do you think there'll be a fourth one after that?
Well, there could be a fourth one. I mean, Estrada certainly was open to it. Eddie Hearn seemed open to it, although was talking about other fights. I don't think if there is a fourth fight, it would be right away. Chocolatito basically was like, of course I would do it. How much are they going to pay me? He wants to make the money. He also said he would consider retirement. He's 35. It's been a great career, a long career. He's got nothing left to prove to anybody. So I don't know if there'll be a fourth fight. If there is one, I don't think it would be the next fight. But in terms of what they did in their third fight, it was not on the level, in my opinion, in terms of overall, just the whole package of excitement and all that as compared to the first and the second fight. But it wasn't far off. It was still a worthy fight, a terrific fight. But I would rank it third in terms of the fights that I personally like the best of the trilogy. I'll go liking the second fight the best, the first fight number 2, and the third fight number 3. That said, I thought the fight was a draw. I know Estrada got the close decision. I saw a lot of people, other writers, fans, people on social media, that there was a real split. A lot of people had a draw, like I did. A lot of people thought that Chocolatito edged it. A lot of people thought that Estrada rightfully edged it out. One thing I think most people would agree on was that Estrada won more of the early rounds because Chocolatito just didn't get going, and that Chocolatito came back and won, a number of those later rounds. And there was a few rounds in the middle that were kind of close, and that's how you end up having fights scored the way they are. I mean, people somewhat objected to the 8-4 score that was in favor of Estrada. That was maybe a little bit too wide. Even if it's only one round, it's still one round. But terrific fight. I thought it was a draw, but those two little guys, no matter when they could fight, and it will be a great fight probably every single time. I found it interesting, Jonathan, that on the same day, you had 2 trilogies. One that fans really, really wanted between Chocolatito and Estrada that produced everything we hoped it would. And then you had the other one between Fury and Chisora, which obviously some fans in Britain embraced because there was obviously a huge crowd at the stadium. But most of the boxing world was like, who gives a shit, and got what they expected, just a nothing fight. I don't know if there's ever been 2 trilogies in significant fights on the same day. Obviously, the heavyweight title at stake in the Fury and Chisora third fight, supremacy at junior bantamweight, or super flyweight, 115 pounds in the Estrada and Chocolatito trilogy fight. Look, Chocolatito and Gonzalez are both going to be in the Hall of Fame. Great fighters. Fury's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Great fighter. But only one fight that night was a great fight, and that was Chocolatito and Estrada, not Fury against Chisora.
And coming up this weekend, we've got obviously here in the UK, Warrington against Lopez. In the US, Crawford Avanesyan, which we did touch on. So I do want to talk about Teofimo Lopez's return against Sandor Martin, ESPN this Saturday. Is this a tougher fight, do you think, than the Pedraza fight would have been?
Yeah, well, Pedraza got ill, non-COVID related. He probably has what I have, had a drop out of the fight. And so they replaced him with Martin, who a few weeks earlier had been assigned the position by the WBC at their recently completed convention that they would order Martin against Lopez as a final eliminator in the junior welterweight division, pending the outcome of Teofimo against Pedraza. When Pedraza dropped out, they were able to make that fight instead. And I do think it's a tougher fight. I spoke to Teofimo in an interview a few days ago, and we sort of discussed that. And, obviously he's confident he would beat either guy. But there's obviously, first of all, higher stakes in this fight because it's now an elimination fight that puts him in position, the winner, to be the mandatory after Jose Ramirez gets his chance at the WBC title that was recently, the vacant title that was recently won by Regis Prograis, after Josh Taylor had vacated. But I think it's a tougher fight because Sandor Martin, it comes into this fight. First of all, he's a southpaw, so Teofimo had to switch up the training camp. He's also probably coming with a lot of confidence. I mean, Pedraza has been a good fighter for a long time, but he's coming off a draw. Before that, he had a loss, even though they were competitive kind of fights. Whereas Sandor Martin, he's got the one win since, but before the one win he had against sort of just a regular opponent back home in Spain, he pulled off a huge upset. He went up to 144 pounds in a catchweight fight, and he sent Mikey Garcia into retirement. Mikey Garcia, has been one of the top fighters for a long time. Won titles in multiple weight classes, and was a pound for pound guy for a long time, and it was close, but he beat him, and so that has to give him confidence. And if Teofimo was not on his game, Sandor Martin could provide him with some problems because of his boxing style.
Mm. And just away from this, Gervonta Davis had a press conference a couple of days ago for this Hector Garcia fight coming up. Just before the press conference, maybe the day before, I think he tweeted allegedly an email from Eddie Hearn suggesting an offer for the Ryan Garcia fight, and then I believe the tweet was deleted. What is your understanding of his situation? He said that he's no longer with Mayweather Promotions, but his next fight is on Showtime. The Garcia fight, if that happens, would be, I believe, Showtime DAZN. What's your understanding of what's going on here?
Sure. Well, what's going on is pretty simple. He's out of contract with Mayweather Promotions. They obviously have had their issues over the last little bit of time. He was upset about this, that, or the other thing. I can't really tell you exactly what it was, but there's always sort of been that push and pull between him and Floyd, and he's exerting his independence. The contract was up, so Mayweather Promotions is not involved with this upcoming fight against Garcia. I mean, if you see any of the press releases or the announcements about the fight, they always list the promotion folks at the bottom of the press release, or contact emails or phone numbers. Mayweather Promotions is nowhere to be seen. They weren't present at that news conference announced fight, so they're just not involved. But Gervonta remains with Al Heyman and PBC as his advisor, and he's still with Showtime. So they're doing the event. It's just not going to involve Mayweather Promotions. It'll involve Gervonta's own company and also TGB Promotions, which is the company that is the main promoter for almost every one of the PBC cards. So nothing there has changed. It's just that Floyd and his team, Leonard Ellerby and those folks, will not be involved, and that's just life in boxing. Promoters and fighters split up all the time. In terms of the offer that he posted that letter to from Eddie Hearn, that doesn't surprise me. The letter was like, assuming that if you're out of contract, as if you can show you're no longer under contract, or I forget how he worded it, but the point was he wasn't trying to interfere with a promotion contract. His understanding was that he was no longer under contract to Mayweather Promotions, which makes him a free agent. So at that point, he was pursuing the fight, making certain promises. Obviously, he doesn't do that without the knowledge of DAZN, which wanted to do the fight. In the end, that fight will be done by the PBC folks and his company and be on Showtime pay-per-view, as you mentioned. Obviously, he has to win against Hector Garcia Luis Garcia in January. Tougher fight than I thought he was going to take, to be honest with you. Garcia's had 2 upsets in a row. He's an Olympian. He's undefeated. He's a southpaw. Fearless was calling Tank out back last summer before this fight was even a reality. So he's got to win that fight. And then, of course, Ryan Garcia has to win his upcoming fight. It's not 100% done yet, but he's going to fight on January 21st, from what his people say. No opponent is 100% yet. They're talking about maybe Mercedo Hesta, who had challenged for the title at lightweight in the past, and now have been fighting, I guess, at 140 pounds. So they both have to win those fights before the fight between them in April can become official. They're looking at April 15th in Vegas. That's a big mega fight, obviously. But that'll be on Showtime. But I can't blame Eddie. If the guy's a free agent, you go after him. And that's what he did, and he was rebuffed. And Gervonta's doing his own thing. So I don't really put a lot of stock in that. I think any promoter, if they're wanting to do big events, would want to have Gervonta Davis in their stable and put on these big shows.
Were you surprised that he actually put the offer out?
Not at all. Gervonta is often will put that sort of thing out, but he also was very very regularly will he put that sort of thing out and then delete it. But because there's people on Twitter that do this sort of thing, they'll screenshot it, and so it's never it never disappears. It's there forever. So no, it didn't surprise me about that. Gervonta can be a little impetuous when it comes to doing those sorts of things. But look, if you're Gervonta Davis, you got to be happy that there's companies and promoters out there that want to work with you. I mean, he's for all of his outside of the ring issues that he has, and he still has the court date coming up in February. That's not insignificant. That's for some serious charges. But in terms of his boxing, he's a star. That's the bottom line.
And
let me tell you another thing, by the way. He may not be fighting Ryan Garcia come January. And Hector Luis Garcia may not be the most known fighter out there. But that fight's going to take place in Washington, D.C., I live in the Washington, D.C. suburbs, so I only live about 25 minutes from that arena where they're having the fight, which, by the way, has not hosted a fight since the final boxing match of Mike Tyson's career against Kevin McBride in 2005. Tank Davis is from Baltimore, which is about an hour away from Washington. They're going to have a huge crowd there. D.C. is a vastly underrated boxing city. They have a big black population who have supported the big fights in the city, whether they're involving black fighters or not, but they're going to support Gervonta Davis's event. I believe there's going to be a ton of people that come from Baltimore down the highway to come see their guy fight. They put on an undercard, which has guys that can draw some people also. That's going to be a hopping night that night. He may not be fighting the biggest name in the main event, but, DC is going to be on fire on January 7th, in my opinion.
A nice local one for you as well.
It's been a while. I've had a number of local fights over the years. Amir Khan came here and fought against Peterson. We've had fights over the river in Maryland, about a half an hour from where I live, at the MGM National Harbor, which has about a 3,000 seater where Lomachenko and Usyk fought in a doubleheader, and we've seen Gary Russell have world championship fights there in the past, and other fight cards. As I mentioned, I had the Tyson fight years ago. You had Lamont Peterson is from the district. Besides the Khan fight, he also fought here in other title fights. Gervonta Davis has fought here before. Adrian Broner was a popular figure, fought here, did a big crowd at the Armory a few years ago against your compatriot Ashley Theophane. But we haven't had like a big time arena fight in DC in quite a while, so I'm excited about that.
On that note, Dan, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you jumping on. Probably the last one we'll do this year, so enjoy your Christmas, New Year, and hopefully we'll start off the year with some big fights.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.